that you'll do. Let's see if I can pull that up first too, like on D2L. So here is the assignments. That's another thing that's piled up for me. I just got to catch up on grading some of these and get into the current. We are right here. No, you're 1100, aren't you? And then the next assignment is under course activities, assignments, and then the field observation. So here is the field observation presentation. So it says sometime during the semester, I guess it is the beginning of the semester because it's so short. Students must expand their boundaries by putting themselves in a setting where they are a racial minority in a situation in which they are unfamiliar prior to participating. A lot of people just make this the PowerPoint slide. You identify common stereotypes and prejudice associated with this population or group. Like, I might judge them as country and small-minded and maybe prejudice or something. Then attend by themselves. You can do it with somebody else. I don't mind. Observe your feelings, reactions, and experiences. Oh, people did Walmart too. So you go to Walmart around here and they say that they're assholes at Walmart a lot. Like they'll pull you aside, hardcore, check the receipts, all that. So people have used that as one, but just having your own experience with it and then put it on a PowerPoint and come talk about it. Difference in communication style and cultures which they observed or were the recipients. And then these identifications written in outline form on PowerPoint. You can do it and then present to the class. That's it. So ideally, it speaks for itself. And then getting into diversity. Any questions on that? Okay. Let's see here. So you guys can see that one. Here is the diversity stuff. So, gosh, I can't believe we're more than halfway through now. But this chapter, it's right out of your book. So it describes the components of diversity, including cultural, pluralism, evaluate implications of racial and ethnic identities for social work practice, analyze implications of diversity related to gender identity, and assess implications of religious and spiritual diversity, which is probably one that I'm a little stronger on. But there's all these different ways. Like we go race, ethnicity, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender, gender expression, religion, ability. This is like if you have disabilities, you have diversity there. And then money. So like socioeconomic, politics. I've got some questions coming in, making sure because we're live. So race is socially constructed classification. Ethnicity is distinguished by cultural ethos. The big one I would say is in social work, we zoom in on power and privilege. So that can come through money. That can come through like if you're in different countries. Let me make sure I have this one. Have you ever been to another country, like a third world country or any, even if you've seen an impoverished area of the United States, like you've gone into like the bad parts of the city, like any Chicago, right? So that can demonstrate power and privilege, which is interesting too. Is when I lived in over the Rhine of Cincinnati, there's different ways you can exhibit. Like maybe the car you drive, maybe the stuff you're wearing, maybe the. Can you think of anything that folks show power or privilege, like when you're in the?
As clothes, cars. Sometimes like the food you eat, I guess.
That's true. Yeah. That's because it could be like the fact that you have the ability to go like maybe carry out at a restaurant or even dine in if that's okay. The minority status is like absence of access to power, so lacks privilege, affects socioeconomic well-being and social acceptance. And then at the bottom, they have people of color, vulnerability based on racial discrimination, color bias. I ask about the countries because even in India, it's actually one of the most prejudiced countries I've ever visited. It's really, yeah, it's really, I don't know. They still have the caste system. And what that means is you're like born into a certain caste of like, there's about 5 different levels. Like they call it untouchables. And I actually thought that was a title that described, I almost need to pull up a video to describe this to you, but like untouchable class in India. It's actually a bad thing when they told me, oh, I spelled India, crap. Okay, there we go. India, videos, and then. Okay, so they do have a few. It's the caste system. And like people won't go near them. It's so weird. It's such a large. There's there's 1.5 billion people in India. And I thought there was a video that would have helped. But so even different than the US, I don't know how to. All right, here's one that I hope it explains it. It won't make sense.
Who is being beaten is said to be a Dalit. A Dalit was raped and burned to death by 2 upper caste 17-year-olds. In fact, her limbs were chopped off after she resisted rape.
You may have heard of the term untouchables, referring to people at the bottom of the Hindu caste system. These people call themselves Dalits, meaning oppressed or the crushed. And if you were to search that word on Google News, you'd find they are subjected to unspeakable horrors on a daily basis. So here are your questions about Dalits based on Google's autocomplete. I'm Omar, and I'm here to give you the answers. This is the 101. Who are Dalits and why are they referred to as untouchables? First, to understand that, we need to get into the Hindu caste system. Most Hindus believe in reincarnation, and the caste, or social groupings to which someone is born into, isn't random. It's something they've earned and deserve based on their past lives. Traditionally, there are 4 main castes, ranging from the Brahmins, priests, to the Shudra, or labor class. A Dalit is actually born below the caste system. They're literally outcasts, and they're considered contaminated from birth. They are believed to be the worst of the worst and should be avoided and marginalized due to their own previous actions. What do Dalits do for a living? Well, there have always been exceptions, such as today the president of India is a Dalit. But generally, they have been given the worst jobs, things that no one else would do, things which many believe will contaminate the spirit. Killing rats, preparing dead bodies for burial, and anything having to do with dead cattle or their skins. These tasks are believed to corrupt the worker's soul to the extent that they shouldn't even be in the same room as someone from a higher caste. Where do Dalits live in India? Today in big cities, some Dalits are integrated and live side by side with other Indians, but a considerable majority live in slums.
That's what it looked like when we visited too. It's almost crazy, like driving through shit like that.
That's trash.
Yeah, it's all trash. because they don't have really good places to, or a lot of them will live on the dumps to like pull food out to live off of and survive. You see this in Nicaragua too, when I lived down there. And there's a lot of correlations to like inner city Cincinnati and like some of the poverty there, but it's on a different level. I don't know how to describe it. There's just so many freaking people. It's crazy.
Traditionally, though, Dalits aren't allowed to even live within a village's boundaries. They can't enter Hindu temples and were even believed to be so unclean that they couldn't get water from the village well, because even their touch would taint it for everyone else. They didn't walk through the neighborhoods of the higher castes, and if someone from the priest or warrior caste came their way, they were expected to throw themselves face first on the floor so even their unclean shadow wouldn't touch others. They live all over India, and in many villages, you'll find them living in the worst conditions imaginable. When can Dalits ascend? Since some Hindus believe that Dalits are being punished for actions committed during past lives, there's no way for them to move up in society. They have to marry other untouchables, live with other untouchables, and maybe, if they follow all the restrictions put on them regarding where they live and what they do, then they can be rewarded by being born into a higher caste next time around. Again, this is the traditional belief system, but it doesn't apply universally. Why Dalits protest? Simply put, their mistreatment is illegal. A few years after India gained its independence, the country passed the Protection of Civil Rights Act in 1955 in order to protect everyone, especially the weak and disadvantaged. Unfortunately, things didn't improve for the Dalits, and they fought hard for even more reforms. They won extra protections in 1989, but things were still really bad. Middle caste landowners found a new generation of Dalits who were unwilling to take the punishment and discrimination thrown at them, and the reply was harsh. Dalit houses were burnt down, people were raped and murdered, and lynchings were a normal occurrence. Even today, Dalits are being killed and mutilated on a regular basis, and it's not only in Hindu society, but in some cases also among Christian and Muslim Indians too. The secular constitution of India is supposed to make sure.
I should say this, the cows are considered holy and sacred. Like they're all vegetarians in India. So that's why I saw that headline. It said like one of the dudes was killed for skinning a dead cow. Like he probably used it for leather to make a bag or something. But maybe because a cow is holy, like you have to maybe bless it like it's kosher first. And they eat like cow's milk and but they're all vegetarians. They don't eat, a lot of them do not eat cow's meat. And like when you're driving a car on the highway and a bunch of cows are crossing the road, they like all stop and hold up the whole highway and let the cows cross. And so it's just a different spirituality, I guess, is where it's coming from.
All its citizens are treated equally, and interestingly enough, the chairman of the Constitutional Drafting Committee was a Dalit himself. And so today, Dalits are simply protesting for their right to equality.
So that's just a little touch into like some of this stuff diversely. Yeah, it's different. It's like why we also keep the diversity, why a lot of them come to the United States. So let's see here. The audio on the video is breaking up. Correct. Sometimes it does. Sometimes people fix the audio by resetting their browser or checking in and checking out or just watching it when it posts up to the final version. So a lot of people, I don't know if Chicago has a lot of folks from India or not. I feel like Chicago has a lot of diversity, but like folks move here to get away from that stuff in India if they can, because it costs a lot of money to fly over the ocean and get a house. And so one thing people call, this is the old way of when you would move over here and assimilate. And that's actually considered a badish term. So assimilation means you become similar to the people. Like you move into the U.S. and you just like act like U.S. citizens. So the minority group members blend into the dominant group, unable to distinguish groups by their cultural characteristics. And then the Americanization process or Anglo-conformity, expected by similarities in cultural and physical characteristics. This is what we actually want to do this a more modern way. It's called acculturation. So that's where the minority group members adopt attitudes and values and norms of the dominant culture, but they, it says they could possibly forsake their cultural heritage. But the way I've had it described is that like you actually keep some of your things from your homeland, like I'm German and Irish, so like they would keep Christmas and like maybe eating potatoes or some stuff from Ireland and Germany, but also eating hamburgers in the United States and celebrating the 4th of July. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Or like just some examples that some folks do, but you have a little bit of your own culture and you also are accepting of the new culture that you've moved into. There's also there's two other ways you could go. Accommodation, which is a stable coexistence and acceptance of the status quo. This is when folks usually come from like another country. Minority groups maintain key features of their own culture. They accept rationalizations for existing dominant minority. Or rejection, which this is tricky, but minority group holds on to all of their cultural identity and say, for example, they won't learn to speak English in the US. But that makes it hard to get a job. It makes it hard to like do a lot of things. You can, like there's people we know that pull it off, but it would be like me saying I want to move over to France and I'm just going to speak English and probably nobody's going to hire me. So there's no perfect right answer, but these are the people's responses to dominance. As I said, acculturation is supposed to be like one of the better. Assimilation means you like throw out all of your past cultural identity and just become like an American. Rejection means you're like F you to the American culture and you're keeping your, yeah. And then marginality is like minority groups live at the margin of two cultures, conflicts of values, expectations, loyalties. That's one of the effects of diversity. Then you have pluralism, and this is supposed to be a way that it affirms cultural identity of diverse groups. It recognizes all cultural strengths have potential to foster resilience, promote competence, contribute to adaptive social functioning. Like even like interreligious marriages and stuff like that, they say sometimes, like if you were inbred all the way, you eventually become like blue blood, I think, maybe the royalty and even maybe retarded, if that's possible. Like if you kept on just like interbreeding with your only family members, and they say it's the same with other mammals and whatnot. Like have you seen the German shepherds with the bad hips and stuff like that? That's an example of it. But when you have diverse breeding, you bring all of the, different traits that ideally should be good. But like in India, actually, it's interesting because my first marriage was to an Indian, and they said that was like forbidden to have interracial marriage in India. So she was very American, like she was adopted over here and grew up with an American mom and a like German Irish mom, and then like an Indian dad. But most people, like they still have arranged marriages in India, where like an Indian has to marry an Indian. And we see it in America too. You know what I mean? If you have an interracial marriage, like it takes a while for some families to accept, like, oh, you're dating them from over there. So that would be cultural pluralism. So it recognizes cultural strengths, have potential to foster resilience, promote competence, contribute to adaptive social functioning, aligns with social work value base of respect, and then promotes practice orientation towards the strengths. I feel like Chicago is one of the most diverse cities. Is that possible? Do they say that a lot, or am I just making that up?
I mean, I don't know about being one of the most diverse cities, but it is pretty diverse.
Right.
We have a whole bunch of Hispanics, blacks, whites.
But it is segregated, right? Is they have like a Hispanic community, then they have like the German community, then they have like the Asian community. As I remember visiting Chicago, and like they have little boroughs or something of different. Okay, I remember that. So other things are intersectionality. So cultural identity is like multicultural rather than monocultural. Monocultural classification risks stereotyping and labeling. Intersectionality is the interplay of overlapping identities. Permutations of cultural identity, infinite and predictable, and the result is multifaceted identities. So again, there's no right answer, but these are just like observations of the different routes you can go with multiculturalism. Oh yeah, this is big lately. Have you heard anything about critical theory lately? Usually in the news, they're calling it critical race theory, and they're saying critical race theory is banned being taught in some public schools.
It sounds familiar, but can you elaborate on what?
Yeah, and I'll do it with some of these words. So they say it's a lens for analyzing power differentials associated with cultural identities, social location determined status, like privilege, power, and access to abundant opportunities, or marginalization, oppression, and deprivation of resources. Like maybe even like the redlining in a way, like knowing that folks were brought up with like banks even in 1940 redlining different communities and not giving loans because I didn't think that housing was good for development. So you give it to that area and that became an up and coming place to live, whereas the other area did not. Then there's status influences the voice, like beliefs of those with power objectified as truth, belief of those with less power silenced or invalidated. Kind of like in the Indian culture, like describing how they truly believe these people were born in like spiritually they believe they were like sinners, if we were to use a Christian language. Like you did something bad to become now a bad person in society and you're like below the culture or whatever. And they really do still do that though, which is so weird. Like they're called the untouchables. I thought it meant like untouchable because they're like holy and religious and spiritual, but it actually means untouchables. They're so dirty and nasty in people's minds, like they're spiritually unclean. And that's kind of the route. It's very big in India, and it is.
That's really insane.
It's crazy almost. Like also, even in like Muslim cultures, you'll see if somebody identifies as a gay person, they'll like throw them off the roof of a building. There's like no acceptance. Or like a woman who gets a job or drives a car, they will like. Now that's changing a bit, but those are some of the experiences that you can see, which is pretty shocking. So here it is, critical race theory. It draws attention to structural and interactional forces perpetuating racism. So it assumes racism is common reality in lives of most people of color, embedded in social interactions and social structures. Race is socially constructed rather than biologically determined, and the dominant groups have a vested interest in the status quo. Because that would keep folks in like India in power if they get to stay in like the top of the caste, whereas the person at the bottom of the caste can't get money, can't own property, can't anything. So we as social workers try to approach it from empowerment. So points to consider socioeconomic structural arrangements, hierarchies of power and privilege, control of access to resources and opportunities, social and political arrangements that benefit some groups and may discriminate against others, voices heard and voices silenced. We want to call that stuff out as social workers. We want to make sure that there is equality. Like if you do work hard, you do get rewarded for it. And it's not just if you're part of the chosen group or something. Influences of cultural diverse groups on changing social structures, and then advocacy and actions leading to social change. which we've seen some of that here in America, maybe more than other countries have shown it, because you still see the bad things happen in other countries. So in multicultural social work, we go from the knowledge base of the standpoint theory. So you don't need to memorize the different theories, but like it determines how we appraise situations, determine the meaning of an event, understand actions of others, and then define interactions from others from different cultural locations. No one is culturally neutral. So we do all bring in our rich background and history, and then, being able to share it openly with others is the idea. And knowing that it's interesting because it's really, we all started somewhere in Central Africa, and those who migrated like up into the north got less melanin in their skin, if I'm saying it correctly. So they were lighter skinned as they lived in the snow, and to absorb vitamin D from the sun, you have a different level of melanin. If you're closer to the equator, you have a different level of melanin because it's like protective, so you don't get burned from the sun or something of that nature. So that's the only way we all, that's over millions of years. But then it's interesting to see how that develops. Like I talk about growing up at a Catholic high school, and at that school, I went to St. Xavier High School where I started, and I finished at Purcell Marian High School. But the first high school I went to was a Catholic all-boys school, and it was mostly like German, Irish, white kids in 1992. That's when I started high school. But we still found ways to be like, oh, he's an East Sider and he's a West Sider. And we still like discriminate each other based on like living on the East side of town, living on the West side of town, even though we almost all look the same. You know what I mean? So like as humans, we like still found a way to like exclude the other, even though we all pretty much had similar upbringings. You know what I mean? So it's weird how as humans we go towards that and look at the differences sometimes, and that it's natural. But if we took action on it and we're like violent or assholes about it, that's when it's also dangerous. It's like, okay, there's no like higher authority or God saying because you were born on the east side of Cincinnati that you're better than the West Siders or something. But that is kind of what we do with race, religion, culture, and all those things. I want to make sure I cover these. I give us so many PowerPoints lately. All right, so the knowledge base, developing a critical consciousness. So, and that's the pedagogy of the oppressed. So we involve conscious raising into relationships among cultural status, privilege, and oppression, questioning structural inequalities, experiencing critical awareness or conscientization, I can barely say it, and then taking action. Like if there is different ways that we see that there's inequality, we attempt to fix it. We try to do our best to fix these different things that come up. So one value base is cultural humility. So embrace the posture of not knowing, recognize the inability to understand intersecting cultural identities of others, rejecting the role of a cultural expert, assume the role of a learner. So learning from our clients. And that's one thing that I always say is like being open to, if you see a person as a psychologist, have them teach you about themselves instead of what we already think we know about them. Like have the client tell you about their history and cultural upbringing. Have a safe atmosphere for that, have cultural collaboration. So listening respectfully, demonstrating genuine interest, affirm openness to learning, and then even reset power dynamics to validate clients' cultural expertise. So really just like having an open mind, talking to the client and hearing about their upbringing. As a practitioner or an agency or a community, trying to have that in all of the places we work and learn and be a practitioner of understanding. Addressing microaggressions, so confront power and privilege, which is sometimes uncomfortable, but adopt an anti-oppressive approach, question fairness and utility of static inequality, and address the inequalities of privilege. And then the demographic shifts, the plurality nation, so no one racial or ethnic group will constitute statistical majority by 2040. They're saying that we are all intermixed and like there won't be, it actually will be 25% Latinos by 2040, I think. Then nobody will have more than 50% is what they're trying to say. It'll probably be like 25% Latino, 20% African American, 40% Caucasian, and then maybe another 10% Asian. So keep in mind, generalizations can lead to stereotyping, and general information provides ideas about how people may differ. We want to adopt cultural collaboration and understand uniqueness of the client's perspectives. Here's the breakdown as of today. So this is 2019. African Americans are 13% of the US population. The race matters are like a shared experience of racism. Traditional cultural values are collectivity, spirituality, kinship, and fictive kin bonds. And then orientations towards work, education, and achievement with mutual aid. So the next is Hispanic. This is the one they're saying will be, now they're saying 25% of the population by 2060. But does Chicago have a lot of Latinos, or is it like, okay, so it's still, do you think more than African Americans, or is it like equal?
Nah, I say less than equal.
Okay.
There's more African Americans.
Okay. Because they're saying they're probably more in Texas and the South, but it's like 16% of the population right now. It's probably mostly in Texas. But we see folks emigrating this way. And then they're saying it will be 25% in 2060. Most speak Spanish, diverse countries of origin. Like I've lived in Managua, Nicaragua, and San Salvador, El Salvador. More than half identify race on the census forms as white. So that's tricky. Like they'll ask, what is your race? And they'll just say white. So even trying to quantify could be difficult because that might be that we already are at 25%, but you got half of them saying that they're white. Traditional cultural values, personal relationships, trust. These are the Spanish words: personalismo, confianza, respect, like difference according to age, role, and gender. They actually do like revere their elders, and then God wills it, which you hear that a lot too. It's like a large Catholic community in Cincinnati. Asians are only 5.5% of the population. So they are a heterogeneous group. What's crazy is that, do you know how many are in China or are in India? They say the world right now is 8 billion people. 1.5 billion are in China, 1.5 billion are in India. So 3 out of the 8 billion are Asian, Indian or Asian Chinese. I think there's 1 billion in Africa, 1 billion in Latin America, and then like 1 billion in Europe and the US. I feel like I'm missing somewhere. Maybe it's Russia. Now, Native Americans in the US are only 6.5% of the population. Most live outside tribal boundaries. The health and well-being, they believe in like balance among spirit, mind, and body. They have extensive family networks. There is a lot of discrimination, so like a traumatic legacy of physical and cultural genocide, and then history of forced inclusion, like non-voluntary assimilation. That's why I was saying assimilation is like a bad word. Like they had to become US Americans and like act like the people that dominated them. The last one is non-Hispanic and white Americans. They're saying is currently the majority. White is like Europe, Middle East, or North Africa. I did not know they considered North Africa white. But it kind of makes sense that the equator runs through like Burundi and Would that be Egyptian then? Or like Egyptians usually lighter skinned?
That's a,
Yeah, I know. I never knew that North
I know
Africa.
it was like whites in Africa. They had a whole thing of fan.
Right. Yeah, I didn't know. So they have shared values considered mainstream American values, self-determination, autonomy, personal achievement, egalitarian ideals, and then rationality. And the subgroup is Arab Americans. I did not know that either. The subgroup of white Arab Americans, heterogeneous immigrant group, the majority identifying as Arab American born in the US, and recent immigrants are more likely Muslim. Now they get into breakdown of like the sexual minorities. So you've got gender, it's culturally defined characteristics of being male or female, gender identity, personal conception of self as male, female, both, or neither. Gender expression has personal expression of gender, which may or may not match binary description of male or female and represents a range of diversity. There's a new movie that have come out, and it's about this in specific, about gender. I want to see if any of you guys have heard of it because they just made it open to everybody to watch. And it's, for some reason, it's become very controversial. Have you ever heard of the movie called What is a Woman? So I'll see if it might turn me off on YouTube, but for some reason it's only shown on Twitter. I don't know if you know like the Twitter and YouTube differences, but apparently it is. Here's the beginning, and it's interesting enough. If you have an extra hour of your life, you can watch it. It's called What is a Woman? Super controversial right now. People are like pissed. Interesting for psychology majors, though.
Being a dad is one of the great privileges of my life. Give my son a BB gun, and that's just about all the emotional support he needs. My daughter, on the other hand, I've heard people say that there are no differences between male and female. Those people are idiots. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches. I write books. I like to make sense of things. But making sense of females is a whole other matter. Even astrophysicist Stephen Hawking, who could come up with a theory on black holes, was completely dumbfounded by women.
Women, they are a complete mystery.
And now our culture is telling us that the differences between girls and boys don't matter. That if you identify as something, then you are that thing. How do we help our kids make sense of this when they're bombarded with conflicting messages about gender and identity? Forget trying to figure out women. The real question is, what is a woman?
As you grow, your body changes from that of a young girl to that of a woman. Soon, Molly will be a young woman, having dates, going to dances, and lovely romantic dresses.
The boy's shoulders are broad and his body muscular, while the girl's body is more curved.
I'd like to know more about different kinds of hormones.
The presence of these hormones in the blood brings about many changes in the bodies of both boys and girls.
Being a woman is one of the things I like best about myself. Having no relationship.
So that's the name of the movie, if you ever look it up. It's blocked on a lot of networks right now, so.
I like to come out here to think. Nature seems to always tell the truth, even when we don't want to hear it.
It's an hour and a half, actually. So have you heard anything about it, or? Yeah, which is fine, but it's interesting how many different. Maybe I should have shown you the trailer. That could be. I'm surprised it's not blocked on YouTube.
What is a woman? Can you tell me that? Well, you're at the Women's March. You must have some idea. Please, if one person can tell me what a woman is.
You are not here for women. We ask you to leave.
What is that? I'm a husband. I'm a father of 4. I host a talk show. I give speeches. I write books. I like to make sense of things. A woman is not anything in particular.
There is not one particular thing. It could be many things to many people.
Some women have penises, right? Some men have vaginas.
I like scented candles. I've watched Sex and the City.
Yeah,
How do I know if I'm a woman?
that's a great question.
You're not a scientist. You're not a gender studies major.
No,
How do you know that you're a man?
I guess because I got a dick.
Can a man become a woman?
I'm not a woman, so I can't really answer that.
Women only know what women are.
Are you a cat?
No,
Can you tell me what a cat is? You want to tell us what a woman is?
I'm a biological woman that medically transitioned to appear like a male. I will never be a man.
And so they go on the internet and they're told that all their problems will be solved if they become a man.
So you worry that there could be a sort of social contagion element of this?
A teeny tiny bit, maybe.
It got me at 42. Your child doesn't have a chance.
And you're affirming it with hormones that have never been used in this way.
Puberty blockers, which are completely reversible.
Completely reversible.
One of the drugs used is Lupron, right, which has actually been used to chemically castrate sex offenders.
You know what? I'm not sure that we should continue with this interview.
You don't want to talk about the drugs that you give to kids, or
How can they be removing the healthy bliss of 15-year-old girls?
there are masculine girls. There are feminine boys. What are we gonna do about that? Carve them up?
How can this whole thing be happening then?
I wanted us to have a safe place to be able to talk about this.
Part of me wants to ask why you care so much.
I care about the truth. I care about children. I care about the women who are having their opportunities stolen from them.
Is it transphobic to tell the truth?
The interview's over. Let's start together.
Excuse me,
For the fair question, wants to know what is a woman.
and you're not gonna find out.
Based on what I'm saying, would you ever want to move to America?
They say no, never.
I hope you enjoyed it a little bit.
We'll see when it comes out.
So he interviewed a lot of different people, asking the question, "What is a woman?" And it is kind of interesting, just because it's just like very controversial, though, as you can see. Like a lot of them, I guess, in the middle said, "We're done interviewing." Like there was a congressman, he just left. There was that medical doctor when she said the chemicals are totally safe. He said, "Then why are they used to castrate a sex offender?" And she said, "I think we're done with this interview." So it brings up a lot of good questions more than anything else. I can see where it is controversial because right now it's a hot button topic. The only place I can find it though is on Twitter. And I don't know why. I remember Twitter switched over on New Year's, like from this type of forum to that type of forum. So it flip flopped. They wanted to be more free speech. Excuse me. So with that, I wonder if there's any other. Oh, here you go. Just to make it show both sides of it. Here's one from the LGBT Foundation. I don't know what they have said about it, but here is their.
There are so many opportunities. There are so many different ways to be a woman. There are so many different things to lean into. The fullness of womanhood. There's just so much joy in that variety.
Is
no right way to present to the world. However you identify is how you identify. How you want to dress that is completely up to you.
I think I identify in lots of different ways, and I don't think of my identity as fixed, and I don't think of it as continuous, like I've always been this and I always will be.
The thing that's been incredibly important to me as a trans woman is how included I've been in women's spaces. I remember the first time I was invited to, some friends were just having a girls' night and they were like, well, maybe you come in.
So, we're going to go into when you first realised you were part of the LGBTQ plus community, and how was that journey for you as a woman?
She walked through the door of this party, and it was like the world had been black and white and turned into colour. The sound had been a scratchy old mono record player, and suddenly it was full on surround sound. You know, back in the day, there was no sense it was ever going to be a thing.
People out there care and want to be part of something, and it takes that one voice to lift others.
Yeah, there is a lot of negative stuff in the world at the moment, but actually there's so much brilliant stuff as well.
Yeah.
I think surround yourself with those people that kind of bring that positivity in your life. Sometimes the best people and the most positive people in your life are the ones you already surround yourself with.
There are so many things that unite all women, cis and trans women included, and none of our goals for being treated equitably clash with each other.
It's really important to make sure that your voice carries weight.
Yeah. Like we're all pulling in the same direction.
The first time I really felt part of a kind of community was my first Pride March, and I didn't know there were people like me around. It was a real kind of euphoric moment where you just felt not tolerated, accepted.
So thinking like, you know, now I just say wife.
Yeah.
For a long time it was partner, and that was kind of ambiguous. But now being able to say my wife,
yeah,
you know, you watch people compute that one.
Being a woman is a beautiful and powerful thing. Live your womanhood. Just live your trans joy. Breathe into it. Exhale into it. Let yourself live that joy.
I think there's like so much joy to be discovered in womanhood.
So I think they made that in response to Matt Walsh's "What is a Woman?" because that's basically what he's going around and asking. Like, so then, what is a woman? Is it like, here's one last review of his work, and like I said, it came out in 2022 and was kind of blocked in most forums. I guess in June of 2023, the documentary positions Matt as a journalist, and they show that. Maybe I'm not going to find the response. That is the official trailer. So just to enlighten and inform ourselves on everything that goes into those, there is a few gender and sexual minorities. So sexual orientation, the same gender is homosexual if you are attracted to the opposite gender. It's heterosexual if you're attracted to both genders. It's bisexual. It may evolve in response to changing life situations. Sometimes there's a trauma, and that could change it. Brain injury, and then identity development. So ease dependent on context, like validated micro context, supportive family, friends are helpful. Also, invalidating context increases the likelihood of abuse and psychological difficulties and suicide, and then experiences vary. So the cohort group or institutional supports, even perceptions of religious tolerance and presence of high profile role models.
I got questions.
Yeah.
What does it mean when it said may evolve by like life? What's the word? How was it worded? It may evolve by in response to a change in life situation. Like what?
My interpretation, if you look at the research, shows that oftentimes there is a trauma in the past of the person who identified a certain way. And that trauma then carries over into behaviors sexually and whatnot. That's what a lot of the research shows. Now, it's even more interesting though. John Money, Dr. John Money, and then also in the middle of the minute, like minute 45 or minute 55, he talks about two guys that kind of pushed the different sexual theories. And I'm not going to do justice describing it, but he kind of shows them as the ones who kind of catapulted the trans movement, like the movement in America. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I'll direct you to watch that. And it might like minute 45 or 55 of that movie. What's that?
I said you answered my question.
Okay. Also, gender and sexual minorities. So I think it is 7% of the world population that would identify as like bi, gay, or LGBTQ. Social work practice, so likely clients in all fields of practice, challenged, complicated by heterosexist and homophobic society, discrimination, potential intersection of multiple minority identities, social workers' self-awareness, and then you want to critically examine personal narratives, assumptions, and level of comfort or discomfort. This is the new PowerPoint because there's only a few slides before. Now they've got, since then we've had gay marriages legal. The last PowerPoint was 2011. This one's 2019. Maybe the last PowerPoint was 2014 because I see 11, 14, and 19. Gay marriage was illegal in most states until 2015. And then in June of 2015, it was passed that legally by the state, you could marry and get the benefits, taxes shared, insurance. Is there anything I'm missing that's, but still some religions won't marry. Like the state will marry them, but religions see it as like man and a woman procreate if they co-create with God. So that's kind of where like the big dispute is like co-creation with God. Now there are some religions that broke off, and there's even stuff in the news like the past month or so. Okay, that is the last slide. So politically, social work, they address homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia, take political action, institutional bias and discrimination, barriers to respectful interactions with social service delivery system. So just making sure that, like, again, there's this unconditional positive regard of a human person, like whatever their history or upbringing is, like we want to be kind and gentle and like take care of them, make sure that they get housing, make sure that they get food, like regardless of whatever history they have and the partners that may come about it, but just treating them as a human individual is kind of what it comes down to. We still may not understand where it's coming from, but still just like humanizing the situation of the person and supporting them. A lot of religious diversity is interesting, is that's where it'll go into next, is like there is a lot of religions that they would say love hate the sin but love the sinner or something of that nature. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but like, and my interpretation of that is like I can sin heterosexually, like I can go out and be like a man hoe and go like have babies all over the place instead of like one partner, one co-creation with God. So similarly, I can sin homosexually and have a bunch of different partners too. So like there's ways to sin heterosexually, homosexually, except and cause harm in people's lives. So it's like sometimes when I'm a single partner and like stick with that. I've dated growing up and have been engaged and married a couple of times, and then finding my life partner to have kids with, and that was cool. So just like understanding that and knowing that people aren't going to be perfect. I guess that's what it comes down to. Then the next piece, and we'll finish with this because it's 5 more slides, and I wanted to get you guys time to be able to go get to the restaurant or have your experience and write about that. But do you know how many major religions there are in the world that you've heard of before? You know,
Christianity, Buddhism,
Mm-hmm.
Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
The 3 major ones.
Yeah, actually, you might have named 2 of the 3 Abrahamic religions. So there's 3 that come from the Old Testament of the Bible. They're called Abrahamic because Abraham was like the old dude in the Bible that had all the kids. So Jews are like the oldest. Jews, Christians, and Muslims all use the first 5 books of the Bible. But then Buddhism, and then the last one was Hindus that we were talking about, the caste system. And they're actually the biggest and the oldest. So Hinduism is one other. Those are the 5 major world religions. There's a few other branches of each, but like basically they're saying current age of religious pluralism by 25 years from now. Mostly it is Christians and Muslims. I think there's 2 billion Christians, which include Catholics, Protestants, Baptists. That's 2 billion. And I think Muslims have 1.5 billion. So that's like Buddhists probably have 1 billion, is mostly in China. And then Jews might have the smallest number of the 5. So religious plays a particularly significant role for ethnic minorities. Example, Black church demonstrates power religion has in shaping society through the civil rights movement, like Dr. Martin Luther King and like different reverends. Religion and community, the basis is common beliefs and shared experiences. In a pluralistic world, some may support teachings of their faith community, yet hold different personal views. And there they may be talking about I'm guessing maybe same-sex marriage and maybe abortions, but that's one example. So spirituality is the personal construct of sacred. Religion is the formal beliefs and practices held in common with others based on affiliation. Dimensions of depth in a life functions, presence of infinite in every finite expression of human life encompasses pluralism. A lot of these are big words that you don't have to memorize, of religion as well as spirituality of agnostics. An agnostic is, you break down the Latin, it means don't know. Agnosticism, so like don't know. Atheist means believe there's no God. Agnostic means I don't know. Religious privilege, so in US, 80% identify as Christian. They don't put that stat in this new PowerPoint. It's a source of privilege and power. It's often invisible to Christians, but very apparent to those who are not Christian. What's that? Right. Yeah, because like when you like see, even at the conference, like there were folks that would pray before their meal. It was like an HBCU conference. So a lot of folks prayed before the meal, gave thanks. I'm trying to think of the different things that, well, I guess also if you were a Muslim, you would see 5 prayer times throughout the day, like sunrise, before lunch, before dinner, after dinner, which is like the sunset prayer. Value issues clients issues often loaded with moral dilemmas, and then also solutions need to be compatible with the client's belief system. Like if you're seeing somebody who is a Christian. Also, as a social worker, even a psychologist or a counselor, so examine your own personal belief systems. You're allowed to have that, like it's not wrong to be spiritual. Understand how your personal definitions of spirituality shapes your beliefs, views of others, views of problems and solutions, and a sense of religious privilege. Adopt a non-judgmental perspective. That's probably one of the hardest things to do, but recommended that we do. And then having religious tolerance. So last slide. Resources for the Christian community. So there's social support networks, concrete services. Like we've got Catholic charities, Catholic social services, Catholic housing network. There's all kinds of like Jewish social services, Buddhist social services, support neighborhood outreach and community action, sponsor self-help groups. Even AA has some Christian implications. Spearhead advocacy initiatives, develop a variety of programs and services. Like I said, the earliest of social workers were religious because they believed you see God in each and every human being, that like you see the presence of God and like the different faces of God in all of our different faces. And then employ social workers and other professional staff source referrals. And that does bring us here to the end. I would show more or all of this if I didn't think they would block me, as they may end up. Sometimes I get like the news back. They're like, sorry, your channel has been blocked because I showed, there's something else I showed last semester. Have you ever heard of, that's weird, I've never seen that. That's only 47 minutes long. Oh, he may have spoken at, yeah, he spoke at Stanford and people come and like throw tomatoes at him and shit. Like they get pissed, which I get. Where is, there's one other, have you heard of this before? This is another one that I've shown that like if I show it on the YouTube channel, they turn me off. They actually shut down my channel. I don't think you can search for it anymore. This might be blocked on, I guess it still is here. There it is. Have you heard of this one before? I don't know if you came at a time when we were all forced to be vaccinated to come into school here. Like,
yeah, I got that too.
Yeah, and we were able to take a religious objection. But this was another video that talks about, I guess people and research are showing side effects and things that we've noticed from it, like being, even though I got it, I still caught COVID, or getting the booster or things of that nature. So a lot of that had come up. But apparently I didn't know this because I try to show things that like can go either way, and I like to keep an open mind for free speech. But when I did my YouTube live channel, they shut me down. They blocked me for like 7 days or 10 days. I didn't realize that. So have you ever heard of this one before? I guess it's that. It's mainly this one. You have to go to another source. Like, it's funny, you have to go to Twitter for What is a Woman, then you have to go to Rumble for this one. And it's just
That's called Die.
yeah. So it's kind of under the same guise with the, was it in 2020 they shut down our school? The vaccine came out in like December of 20, and then all of us were able to get it in June of 2021, I think. And then to come to school in August of 21, you had to get it, or you used a religious objection or conscientious objector. And that's kind of the breakdown of it. But
I thought, because I came in my freshman year, it was the fall of 2020, because they shut everything down in 2019, I think.
It was, so the school year was fall 19, spring of 20, and March 17th, 2020, we went on spring break and never came back. So you would have been a freshman then, maybe. And then a lot of people got behind because of it, because it was like hard to catch up with schooling and like doing the work remote. And that's when I started this YouTube live stuff, which is different than coming in person. Like I knew that I failed online when I went to graduate school. But when I came in person, I did just fine. Like when I could talk with the teacher. And then, yeah, the vaccine trials came out in early 20, but it was forced mandated 2021. Year was vaccine mandate. And that was, I think we've gotten rid of it. And then now they're hearing stuff at the Supreme Court about it. Most of it was even January of 2020. September 21, Joe Biden announced that the federal government would take steps to mandate this for entities under the authority of the federal government. Like if you wanted to travel abroad too, you had to have your vaccine passport. Like you have to carry a little card around. And then I think they have found that to be unconstitutional in the U.S. Supreme Court at this point. But yeah, U.S. colleges and university, public, and required students to be vaccinated before attending in-person classes in the fall of 2021. Led to black market counterfeit CDC vaccination cards. I didn't realize that. You can buy a fake vaccination card. That's hilarious. NFL made it, so that was the other thing. Somebody said, like, the dude that got hit by the Bengals guy, he played for the Bills. They were like, it was because he was vaccinated. Nobody knows. So they're saying it causes clots. So there's research showing it causes blood clots, brain aneurysms, and things of that nature. So, like, just to watch out for that and stay healthy. And really?
It's the first time I'm hearing about like when they first came out with the vaccines. I heard a lot of people was against it because not only was it like a approach on our rights, but because they thought it was going to be side effects. But this is the first time I'm actually hearing that there have been side effects from the vaccine.
There's a lot of research on it now. Again, you have to look at it on different websites because it was a big moneymaker for Pfizer. Let's be honest. Like those vaccine companies made millions and billions, maybe even trillions of dollars. It's possible they made $1 trillion. And so to mandate it to all of humanity and give out 5 billion doses of it to 8 billion people, I mean, that's $100 a shot. So 5 billion times 100, and then did you get the boosters and the second booster and the third booster? That's 100 a shot makes it 100 times 5 billion. So that would, well, yeah, 500 billion is $500 billion. So it's a big moneymaker. You can't find the research unless if you dig on alternative websites. So that was one other thing I was saying, that I was not able to show this at all. Apparently I showed as I wanted to stay open-minded to it, like, well, maybe it is causing stuff, and they shut down my channel. So it was like,
there's one simple tinnitus hack anyone can use to improve their hearing almost overnight.
That is a commercial.
Why? Why do we never believe them?
See if the trailer would do the same. I'd hope not.
These people know. These people know.
Who knows?
The governments know. This has been well planned. This is Agenda 2030. This is the Great Reset.
Somebody mentioned to go onto Google and go into the news section and then type in diet soap. And lo and behold, there's a whole listing of people, of articles, of people within that last week who died suddenly. Older people, a lot of younger people around the world. And then you find out they were vaccinated. And so it's like, okay, so it's the vaccine might be causing this.
Most people don't want to know what's in the vaccines.
But yet when we open it, almost 2 years into this, we find that it still says intentionally plain.
In fact, nobody wants to know what's in the vaccines because, look, if people understood what was in the vaccine, they'd go apeshit.
It's just there's something different about the blood. Something's causing this and something needs to be said. Somebody needs to look into it. I talked to other embalmers that have 30, 40, 50 years of experience. Have you guys ever seen this stuff before? And the answer was always, I've never seen anything like it.
Why is Bill Gates involved in public health? And why does public health spend the first part telling you how the world is overpopulated?
And at first glance, this is a bit scary. U.S. life insurance companies have reported an overwhelming and unexplainable increase in all-cause deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds.
That's a 12 sigma event. 1 in 800 years, 12 standard deviations above the mean.
No one's even calculating that. It's apocalyptic.
I thought he was protected with that Pfizer.
There's a huge part of me that feels a responsibility for everything that's happened. I'm so sorry.
The doctor, after a while, came out and said, your son's dead, you can go home now.
Who knows? Young people are dying these days.
I said to Mr. Hirschman, this is different. This isn't normal, is it? And he said, absolutely not.
The dead can't speak for themselves, so therefore I have to speak for them.
Connecting dots here, there's no way that that type of obstruction would not cause stroke, heart failure.
My sister died. She was 58, and she died suddenly on Friday of a heart attack.
They will do with you what they feel like doing to you. It's the new bullet, it's the new missile, it's the new form of warfare.
I want people to understand that we're in a fifth generation warfare for the heart and the mind.
This is the greatest orchestrated die-off in the history of the world.
There's most definitely evil in this world, and evil like we could not possibly imagine.
Oh, I hit polls or so. That is some of the folks that are talking about the difference in, freedom of travel, freedom of speech, freedom of whatever. And it is interesting, though, that it's kind of like not able to be shown on different venues. So if nothing else, it's information that could be taken in that just, I don't know. Yeah, it's on alternative media, so that's probably why you haven't heard of it before. Supposedly there's a second edition that have come out. That one's an hour and 8 minutes total. And I think it's still only on this one. If you ever go to that, it's similar to Twitter. But I have family on both sides of the aisle fighting it, like had gotten it and like just don't get the boosters, and the other half like don't get it at all whatsoever because 99% of us survived even after catching the COVID flu and whatnot. So, with that being said, yeah, I was going to get into 8, 9, and 10 on Wednesday and try to finish up the 14 chapters by the end of next week. But we get into empowerment next, like different ways that we empower each other and find ways to help our clients and to help out. So any questions? The final paper is just a self-reflection. So I think I posted it for you guys already to see. So when you're asked about self-reflection status, if I go back to the major assignments, the final self-assessment is really just like asking you about when you practice and what you would do with it and how it would look. Dang, I didn't realize it's that late already. I got clients at 4, 5, 6, and 7 tonight in my private practice. Yeah, because I had to cover supervision from Friday at hospice. So I did that 12 tonight, the class 1 to 3, and then now class or clients 4, 5, 6, and 7, and a Zoom meeting at 8. So sometimes your mind just like spinning. It's like, dude, how do we do it all? Yeah, there it is. So this self-assessment, you can just go through and answer each question. So who am I as a person? How do I assess my developmental history? What are my best 5 qualities? What are my 5 areas of life I want to improve? If an interview asks me my philosophy of life, what is it? What role does religion, culture, and ethnic values and gender and sexual orientation play in my life? How do I respond to those who are different from me? How am I open to diversity? That's actually the next assignment too. Who are my heroes? What are my personal goals? So there's no right or wrong answer. It's just a self-reflection. And then as a professional, what are we going to do with all these? Like, what are my reasons for becoming a social worker or a psychologist or a counselor? What are my countertransference issues? That usually means like when I see a client for trauma and it reminds me of a trauma growing up, do I get like stressed out and like shut down as a professional, or am I able to share with my supervisor and make through it? What do I expect from clients? What do I expect from my profession? What do I anticipate getting from my colleagues? What are my professional strengths and weaknesses? What are my goals and objectives professionally? What would my fellow students say about me? What would my professors say about me? What type of clients do I wish to work with and why? And then with whom will I work? What issues and how do I handle praise and criticism? Because those are both hard to handle sometimes. Like I'll fight somebody or I'll be all sensitive about it, or I'll be like, no, I'm not that good. I give it all to God or whatever it is. How do I fully attend to my clients? And then how do I fully attend to my clients? It's asked twice. So that's the final. But yeah, those are the last 2. Hopefully those that were online are able to watch it or just email me the questions, and